Welcome to the 80-20 rule explained. In this video, I'm going to share with you not only what the 80-20 rule is, but also how you can apply it in your business. I'm going to start with an overview of the 80-20 rule, including where it comes from and who invented it, or who discovered it, I should say. Then I'm going to dive into some of the ways you can apply it in marketing your business, in addition to sharing a case study of how I used the 80-20 rule with a client a few years ago to completely revamp her business and make her way more profitable. So before I get into explaining the 80-20 rule, let me just seed a little bit about why this is a valuable concept to understand and apply in your business. The 80-20 rule can really help you identify what to focus on in your business. And as entrepreneurs, we know, well, most of us, and definitely me, focus is one of our biggest challenges usually. So the 80-20 rule can identify and help us see what's really working and what's really not working, what's generating results and what's draining us, so that we can make decisions, strategies, and get rid of things and focus more attention and effort on things that are going to drive better results. So first, I want to tell you a little bit about the 80-20 rule and how it was discovered. There's a man in Italy who is named Vilfredo Pareto. Vilfredo Pareto was around in the late 1800s. He was born in like 1823 or something like that. He was an economist and a sociologist, and he studied land ownership in Italy. And what he discovered was that 80% of the land in Italy was owned by 20% of the landowners. Interesting. So he published his theory on this whole discovery that he made, and people started to notice that the rule, the 80-20 or the Pareto principle, it applied to more things than just land ownership. And in fact, over the last, 100 and so years, we've learned that it applies to a lot of things, including things in nature, in economics, in technology. So for example, we know now that about 20% of the seeds that we plant yield about 80% of the crops that we harvest. We know, for example, in technology that about 20% of bugs in programs cause about 80% of the problems in an operating system. And in business, we see that very often about 20% of our products or services or clients generate about 80% of our revenues or profits. In marketing, we've seen that usually there's a handful of Facebook ads, about 20% of Facebook ads that generate about 80% of the revenues from Facebook ads. Of course, the challenge is to figure out which 20%, which is the 20% that's driving the 80% of the problems, and which is the 20% that's driving the 80% of the outcomes that we want. So we need to start to figure out how to analyze our businesses for the 80-20 breakdowns in different areas. And one thing to keep in mind, it's not always exactly 80-20. Sometimes we've got a 10-90 or a 70-30. But in general, there's usually a way to slice and dice your data in your business to find things that we can get rid of because they're not working or they're generating more problems than they're worth, or the things that are really working well that we want to invest more time and attention into growing. So let me share with you an example of what this looks like. And before I do that, and before I dive into this case study that's going to illustrate this for you, I want to invite you to like this video, subscribe to my channel, and feel free to comment below. So I'm going to start with this case study, and then I'm going to break down what I did so that perhaps you can replicate all of it or some of it or create your own version of it. I was working with a client. She's an accountant in Miami, Florida. She was my accountant at the time. And she had a good business. She had a lot of clients. She was very busy, but she wasn't as profitable as she wanted to be. And she was feeling overwhelmed in the business. Now, she wasn't by herself. She had employees as well. And so I said, why don't we do a Pareto analysis of your entire business, of all your clients, and figure out what's draining you and your team and what's actually working really well. So I was able to get an export. She exported all of her client data. So we were able to I was able to create a spreadsheet. Now, I know I get really excited about spreadsheets, and some of you might not, but I promise you this is really easy. We basically took every client on a spreadsheet. We had the name of the client, and then next to the name of the client, we had the total revenues generated by that client. And then next to that, they were charging by the hour. So we had the total hours that they were putting into each client. And then I came up with a profitability column where I looked at total revenues and total cost to come up with a number that showed us the profitability of each client. And then I went ahead and added a little column to determine how much joy does this client bring, because they wanted more joy in the business. So I wanted to measure for joy and see, is this a client that's a 5 in terms of like, well, we love this client, they're so fun and easy to work with, or are they kind of like a 1, like, no, we don't really enjoy working with them that much. So these were the categories. And then what I did was I put them in reverse order of profit. So that profit figure that I gathered, I sorted the spreadsheet by profit, and it was a long spreadsheet. And right up at the top, we could see that it was basically about 22 or 23% of the clients that were the really profitable ones. And funny enough, most of those clients were also the really joyful ones. Isn't that interesting? What an interesting discovery that it just so happened that the most profitable clients tended to be the most joyful clients. And this was because those profitable clients, many of them were paying higher fees and they were taking up less time and they were on some sort of retainer. So we were able to see that, when a client is on retainer and they're paying month to month and they're getting the best of our services and they're invested with us, that they tend to be easier to work with, they tend to be more profitable. And then here were all these other, like down below, the other 80, 78% or whatever of the clients. A lot of them were just like once a year, they would call, hey, can you do this for me? Or, hey, can you just do my taxes? Or they would negotiate and they would create a special deal, and then they would be really difficult. So they'd add extra hours on top of it and not charge them. Like all these clients down here, not all of them, but many of them were the difficult clients. And lo and behold, the joy figure was down in the 1s and the 2s and sometimes the 3s. And so what we did was we decided to create the whole new business model based on that top 22%. And basically say, all right, from now on, we're only working on retainer. We are only working monthly recurring with clients. We're no longer taking on these little one-off itty bitty projects. We're not working by the hour anymore. We are only going to take on these clients where we do all of their books. We do all of their accounting. We do all of their tax planning, and we get all the way into their business instead of these kind of like loosey-goosey Johnny come lately types of clients. So they spent the next, I don't even remember. It was like 6 months or a year going back to every single client and letting them know, hey, the way we now work is this. If you want to work with us, you sign an agreement. You're going to work with us for this amount of time at least. Here are the rules. Here's how you're going to pay. It's not by the hour. It's by a retainer. They created a whole new set of standards and boundaries just around modeling after those best clients. And they got rid of all those other clients. They were able to work less. She installed a gym in their office. They have they just have so much more fun now because they released a lot of time that they were spending working with difficult clients who weren't even profitable. So what can you learn from this case study? Well, number one is you got to do the analysis. You got to get into the numbers. You got to dig into that data. And I know some people don't enjoy it. That's something maybe you can find somebody to help you do it if you don't like it. It's pretty simple. You just want to get a sense of what you're measuring for. Are you looking for profit? Are you looking for revenues? Are you looking for joy? Are you looking for some combination of all the above? But you need to have a couple, at least one measurement that you want to measure this whole thing by, and then you sort your spreadsheet by this measurement from highest to lowest. And then you look at where's the top 80% of outcomes. So for example, if you're sorting for profit or for revenues, you want to look for when you add them up, where do you hit 80% of revenues, and then count up how many clients is that? So you might find that you're generating 80% of your revenues from 5 or 6 clients. So you want to identify that. It doesn't mean that you want to limit your business to only 5 or 6 clients, but maybe like my client that I told you about, you can model your marketing efforts around those clients. You can aim your marketing at those clients so that you can get more clients like that. And you can model your deals and your agreements after those client agreements so that you can have more of what's serving you and say no to what's not. If this is interesting for you and appealing to you and you want some support in creating some big outcomes in your business, maybe I can can help. You can check out what it looks like to work with me at superstaractivator.com/go. I look forward to meeting you.